Okay, we're going to go through T. Colin Campbell quotes. It's from this book, Holy Grail of Wisdom, quotes by me. T. Colin Campbell is one of the all-time famous nutrition doctors. His book, The China Study, is one of the all-time best nutrition books ever written. He's a biochemist, and he, authored the China Study. His big specialty was specializing in showing the relationship of animal protein to cancer. Okay, so here's some quotes from T. Colin Campbell. He's got lots of videos on YouTube. He's written a bunch of other books too. They're all good. I think China Study is the best one though. Okay, so here we go. The ideal human diet looks like this. Consume plant foods in forms as close to their natural state as possible, whole foods. Eat a variety of vegetables, fruits, raw nuts and seeds, beans, and whole grains. So he does recommend here raw nuts and seeds. Other people would disagree with that, like Esselstyn. Esselstyn's more dealing with cardiac high-risk patients. I myself like to keep fat lower. There was a debate between T. Colin Campbell and Dr. McDougall, and Dr. McDougall sort of recommended lower fat. T. Colin Campbell is saying it doesn't depend. It depends. It wasn't as big of a deal. T. Colin Campbell goes on, I'm 84 years old and I don't need to take any pills. Casein, the milk protein, is the most powerful carcinogen known. All animal protein is bad, not just casein. All animal protein increases cancer risk and cholesterol level and atherosclerosis. That's an important point. Basically, animal protein tends to put the body into like an anabolic overdrive, and so it just ramps up everything. When you're building, you need more building material, so you get increased cholesterol in the blood. You only get increased cancer when animal protein is more than 10% of calories. Plant proteins provide all the protein that humans need. Plant food has antioxidants, but animal food does not. Meat is pro-oxidant, so it's the opposite of an antioxidant. Ketogenic diet requires multiple supplements. Okay. That's just a quote got thrown in there from Garth Davis. All of his fat patients were eating high-protein diets with oil. Okay, so you do that, you're increased risk to be fat. T. Colin Campbell continues. In rural China, obese people did not exist. Okay, did you hear that? That's an important point. So where they were eating a rice-based diet and up to 90% of their calories from white rice, there's nobody fat. It's 1% of calories are fat in white rice. So nobody gets fat. The lower the percentage of calories from fat, the skinnier the population. He continues. Animal protein dramatically increases the risk of cancer. Okay, he continues, T. Colin Campbell. Omega-3 supplementation has no proven benefit. That's important for you to realize that, because there's a lot of people on the internet hyping omega-3s, and I've talked about this before, but it's totally overrated. Okay, he says you only need about 5% of your calories from fat in the diet, and when you get your dietary fat down to near 5%, the risk of breast cancer is dramatically reduced. So you can see the way to win the game here. No animal protein at all. None. Zero. Nothing from an animal. Okay, that's number one. That helps protect you from cancer. Number two, minimize dietary fat. He says, T. Colin Campbell, get your dietary fat down to near 5%. The risk of breast cancer is dramatically lowered to almost zero. And there was dramatically much lower risk of breast cancer in these other countries. The more animal fat a woman eats, the higher her risk of breast cancer. The best study of the relationship between dietary fat and breast cancer is the one by Ken Carroll, Fat and Cancer, from 1986. American women get breast cancer 5 times as much as Chinese women. And then he wasn't too impressed by the nurses' health study, because even what they call the low-fat diet was really what I would call a high-fat diet, 25 to 31%. To get legitimate comparisons, you need to compare meat eaters to plant eaters. Okay, so that was the problem with the nurses' health study. Some other risk factors of cancer are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, also car exhaust, factory smokestacks, petroleum tar products. Colin Campbell, nutrition is the master key of human health. He felt it was the most important thing to study. I would agree too. Like I said, I've been a doctor 30 years and I've studied a wide variety of things. Nutrition is the most important thing. And toxicology is highly important. That's neglected by the vegan community, toxicology. Food is pretty much the most important topic there is, T. Colin Campbell. Yep, you're right. Campbell continues, the whole foods, plant-based diet with no added meat, oils, salt, or sugar prevents 95% of cancers, nearly all heart attacks and stroke. Type 2 diabetes optimizes body weight, increases energy level, improves erectile function, and minimizes chronic pain. That's why, I say it's a joke, all this stuff about paleo, keto, carnivore, low carb. There's nothing like this. It's only the low-fat, plant-based diet that reverses heart disease. There's no other diet that's got these types of results and numbers. So they're all just a bunch of posers, all this paleo, keto, carnivore, low carb stuff. He continues, our bodies never went to the trouble of making antioxidants because they were so readily available in what for most of our history was our primary food source, plants. One should strive to eat 100% plant-based instead of 95 to 98%. Just like you wouldn't advise a smoker to smoke 1 cigarette a day, you'd advise them to quit smoking. Okay, we could switch early cancers on and off in rats simply by changing the amount of protein they consumed. We share almost all of our physical characteristics with herbivores and almost none with carnivores. He's a big favor of holistic research rather than this reductionist stuff. He says there's an inherent trade-off. The more perfectly controlled the experiment, the less it resembles reality. While studying chemicals in isolation provides for pretty findings, these research methods cannot provide predictive models for complex interactions with the multiple causes and effects, in other words, with real life. Comparatively speaking, enzymes are large, and an enzyme molecule could be 20,000 times the size of a substrate that it processes. And that relates a little bit to what I was just talking about earlier with that book report from Brent Stockwell on The Quest to Cure, how it was hard to get a little molecule to affect a big protein because the protein's so much bigger. Okay, multifunction oxidases are an enzyme that processes aflatoxin. That's when you got into the moldy peanut butter was more carcinogenic. Okay, we'll skip that section there. T. Colin Campbell. The human body has an amazing capacity to repair damaged DNA. If this ability is supported with proper nutrition, most if not all the damage can be undone long before cancer is initiated. Okay, that's an important point. What he's kind of indirectly hinting at right there is the somatic mutation theory is probably bogus. That the body can fix most DNA injuries that happen transiently by a chemical, for example. But when you keep on making it worse by pumping all that growth factor on them with the animal protein, then it's hard for them to keep up with and prevent cell replication of a cancer. Okay, here's the words of Colin Campbell. Animal protein puts the body into overdrive. That's an important concept to understand. Animal protein generally puts the body into overdrive. We know that animal protein has more leucine, more methionine, is associated typically with more iron, like in red meat, for example. It has more fat, which causes insulin resistance, which increases insulin-like growth factor. So it ramps up the bodily growth systems. The nutrient-sensing pathway of mTOR, it ramps that up. It increases insulin-like growth factor. It adds iron. All of these things push towards cell replication, which means increased cancer growth. And then here's something funny with T. Colin Campbell. None of the ultra-expensive high-tech advances of the past 50 years have made a dent in the overall death rates in most first world countries. And while medicine is now better equipped to save somebody's life after an acute event, like a car crash or a sudden heart attack than it was 50 years ago, we're really no better at preventing chronic degenerative disease like heart disease and cancer. Often these are called the diseases of affluence than we were in the 1950s. So what he's basically saying is despite billions, hundreds of billions of dollars being spent on cancer, we're really not much better at it than we were in the 1950s. That's a big statement because the public is always impressed by razzle-dazzle. They don't realize the cancer treatment's progressed very little outside of low fat. And he's like, oh, there's no doubt genetic interventions will help the 0.01% who suffer from rare conditions brought about by faulty genes. So he's making a joke that genetics is a very small part of medicine. The vast majority of cases of chronic disease, the vast majority of the time, good nutrition has a much bigger impact than anything else. Genetic determinism leads to despair. Yeah, you just got to accept the drug dealer's drug. Nutritional holism leads to hope because you can help yourself. Probably about 97 to 98% of all cancers are related to diet and lifestyle and not to genes. Okay. Oh, he also says, none of the so-called accepted causes of cancer in the absence of high animal protein mattered much. It's not genetics. It's not chemical carcinogens. It's not toxins like aflatoxins or viruses so much that increase the risk of cancer. It's the promoters, the animal protein and the animal foods. That's a big statement. Okay, T. Colin Campbell continues. The question we should be asking is, what food should we eat to support our bodies to maintain health? A holistic approach, and we know that. Eat plant foods. Okay, increasing consumption of omega-3 was actually associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. The higher the intake of omega-3s, the more the cases were of diabetes, from his book Whole. The primary reason our healthcare system is broken is because it does not deliver health and seems to have little interest in doing so. We're paying way too much for way too little health. Okay. The recommended dietary intakes are too high. Most big disease foundations are well known and bogus. When his wife had a stage 3 melanoma, he told her to eat a vegan diet, and I know she was alive and healthy 8 years later. So anyways, those are quotes from T. Colin Campbell, the great nutrition research expert, the author of the China study. Hope that was helpful.